What is up, my degenerate gamblers? Welcome back to the Die Hard MMA podcast. I'm your host, as always, your boy Clint, and it has been a couple of weeks. I hope everybody's doing well. I'm happy back to be in the captain's chair, and we're going to be talking about some fights coming up here, UFC Vegas 62. You guys know what was going on with me. So we usually do a show on the break weeks. Last week, I was kind of doing my own thing. Had a friend tragically pass away in a motorcycle accident, unfortunately, and just kind of needed to take the week off, rest, recover, recharge. The UFC break week could not have come at a better time. And then we had like a birthday thing scheduled for my daughter. So like it's been absolute madness this week. I got a break week. I didn't really get a break. And on top of that, the little monster might have gotten me sick. So I do apologize. I like to try and keep it as professional as possible, but I'm dealing with a little throat thing today. So if I have to take a pause and take a sip of water, something like that to keep me going, please forgive me. I hope all of you are doing well. Everybody already piling into the chat. We've got my guy Dream and Michael Lunday kicking off the roster here, the MMA God and Z Goalie in the chat. I hope everybody's doing well. Smash the like button for me. I've got a special guest for you all today, someone who I've been a fan of for a very, very long time, and I am very excited to have him on the show to break this card down with me, none other than Aaron Bronsteter himself. Aaron, how you doing today, my guy?
What's up, Quinn? Well, first off, sorry about your loss. That's really sad to hear that your friend passed away. And second, I'm also battling a cold, so maybe we'll just kind of we'll be like chameleons with each other and just blend in with our current health status and go from there. But yeah, I'm sorry to hear that you had to go through that very, very tough. Obviously, when anybody passed away, but I'm sure your friend, unless your friend is somebody you met at like an old age home some time ago, is probably around your age. So that's always makes it a lot tougher.
Yeah, thank you very much, Aaron. I don't want to, drag the podcast through the mud quite, too much, but it was my oldest friend, a guy that moved to town when I was very young. I made friends with him, and we really grew up together. He was like a second son to my parents. He was the guy that always showed up uninvited for dinner, and we just kind of got used to it, that kind of a guy. Went off to college with me, had my first real job together. So this one was very unexpected, really rough to get through. And I'm just happy to be back talking fights. That's my happy place. So needed the week off to recover, talk to some people and stuff like that. But now it's like welcome distraction to have the UFC back and, doing my tape study and talking fights and stuff like that with you. And I do want to also give a special shout out to you because it is Thanksgiving for my people up north. So we appreciate you taking the time out of your holiday schedule to come on the show with us.
Yeah, I see from your Minnesota gear, you're probably pretty close to our borders. So if you want to get your turducken on, just drive a couple miles the other way, and maybe you can make it happen. But yeah, we did Thanksgiving dinner last night, so tonight is just like any other school night for my kids. So I'm happy to not have to put them to bed, to be quite frank.
I hear you. That's always the parent life. It's always a treat when we get to not have to worry so much about the schedule. And actually, I'm Minnesota by marriage. I'm a Vikings fan. I'm actually out in the desert in Arizona. I wish I could pop up. I've got way too many Canadian friends. It'd be awesome if I could just hop across.
Yeah, much longer drive from Arizona.
Yeah, it's a bit of a track from here. All right, man. So, Aaron, again, thank you so much for coming on. Everybody, this is Pub Sports Radio. Hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already. We're still rocking on the sister channel while we get some YouTube junk sorted out. We'll be back over there soon enough. But we are talking UFC Vegas 62 today. Lines on the show, of course, as always, brought to you by our sponsor, Superbook Sports. Make sure you head on over there to check them out. But we've got a fun show planned for you. And Aaron, you and I were talking about it just a little bit backstage. This is a tough card. Like, it's going to be real fun to dig into these fights, but this is a hard one to read. And starting things off, it couldn't be any messier for us. Mike Jackson taking on Pete Rodriguez. And I mean, it seems just so simple, right? Everybody loves to hate Mike Jackson. He's that guy. He loves to hear the sound of his own voice. I hate Mike Jackson fight weeks because he gets on the microphone and just doesn't shut up nonstop about whatever topic he feels like, not necessarily answering the questions people ask him. It's brutal. But then you've got this 4-1 Pete Rodriguez who's undersized for the division. All of his fights are round one finishes. He's only been to the second round twice in his entire career. Kid just has crushing power, but he's small. So you've got this aged veteran 37-year-old Mike Jackson who's quite frankly a little bit better than people give him credit for. He's a decent Muay Thai fighter. He's going to have a 3-inch reach advantage. So far, I mean, he's not fought a great level of competition, but 88% takedown defense, and he's going to be striking with this little Tasmanian devil, Pete Rodriguez. And, I mean, it's got to be favored or pass, right? But I don't think I want to lay this kind of a price tag on Pete Rodriguez. He's like a minus 700 favorite right now. What do you do with this, Aaron?
I pass. I mean, we saw what happened last time. MMA is a freaky sport, and everybody was parlaying Mike Jackson's opponent last time around. And how'd that work out? I mean, when you look at what was it, Barry? What was his first name? I'm trying to remember his first name. The dude from Ireland who he fought.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody expected it to be a complete walkover. And we saw what happened. It was a DQ win for Mike Jackson. So stay away from these kind of lines. If you got a 4-1 guy in Pete Rodriguez and you got Mike Jackson, to me, there's not even a great angle that I would take on this one. So if you want to look for one, if you want to look for the props when they come out and they're posted, more power to you. But this is the kind of Dean Barry. Yes, thanks, Adam. Yeah, then this is going to be just a total pass from me. Too volatile, and I try to avoid volatility at all costs when it comes to this game that we're playing.
I hear you, man. Usually I make the mistake of steering straight into it, and that's something I'm trying not to do here. I was hoping maybe I could be a little sneaky and look at, Pete Rodriguez by knockout or something like that. But so far, the overseas openers for that is like minus 250. So we're not even going to get like an even money or a minus 150 on something like that. If we would, I'd play it. But at minus 250, that's disgusting to try and lay that kind of a price tag for a prop.
Pete Rodriguez is that much better than Mike Jackson, look at the sub prop. That's one thing I always like to do. If there's a really lopsided matchup and it's somebody who has a history of knockouts, sometimes it seems like that's the obvious answer. But I did this last card with Sadiq Youssef, and it paid off big time for me. I took Sadiq Youssef by sub at plus 1,200 because when you look at a guy who's that big of a favorite, doesn't have any subs on his pro record, has subs on his amateur record, so he's obviously capable of it, trains under Lloyd Irvin, who's a jiu-jitsu guy. Like, those are the kind of spots that you want to pick. Those are the sneaky spots. But I just don't know enough about Pete Rodriguez here that would lead me to believe that he's going to get a submission. But that being said, if you want to throw a dart on it, if it's like plus 800 or something, and you think that he's that much better than Mike Jackson, that he can win any possible way, maybe take a flyer. Because if you are going to point at a weakness in Mike Jackson's game, even though we haven't seen the guy compete much, probably on the ground. So let's see how it plays out.
I don't hate it. And congrats on a glorious call on the Sadiq Youssef sub, because that was fantastic. I never saw that coming. I thought he was going to cruise straight on through that guy and hit him with like a clinch knee or something like that. Jumping the ghillie was not something I saw happening.
Yeah, well, I showed my work on it, right? Like if you have somebody who's that big of a favorite, sometimes it's good to do that, because if you listen, the featherweight division is the hardest division to be ranked in. Like, that's just murderer's row from top to bottom. So if you got a guy who's taking a short notice fight off the regional scene and you're a ranked featherweight, you got to figure he can do whatever he wants in that spot if he's that much better. So that's where you got to look at, again, those spots. And maybe he's going to be like, well, let me show everybody that I have this element in my game so that my next opponent has something to think about. Those are the ways that I like to approach things in situations like that.
You find value in those contrarian angles. I love it. Absolutely love it. All right, man. Speaking of which, might be a little contrarian here on this next fight. We're talking CJ Vergara taking on Tatsuro Taira. And this kid is a prospect. Like, it's obvious the UFC wants to reach those Asian markets, and they're really pushing some of these younger people. But what we have seen from these younger fighters that come in super early in their career, undefeated, starching everybody, they're just a little too green sometimes. Young kids make young kid mistakes. He's 22. I was so dumb at 22, Aaron, let me tell you. Like, I can't imagine competing against these full-grown men in the UFC and not slipping up at some point. It's bound to happen. Like, that first loss is going to come. It's just a matter of when. The question is, will it be Saturday? You know, I love my guy, CJ Vergara. AZ boy, got to root for the locals, right? Had a bet on him in his last fight out. He pulled off the upset. It was another one of these big underdog price tags over Klitzen Rodriguez. Hairy split decision, but I think it was plus 250, plus 230 by the time I got my hands on it. So that one felt good to come home. He's just a junkyard dog, Aaron. And I think that's what I like most about him. CJ Vergara is the kind of guy that's going to use that forward pressure, walk you down, make you uncomfortable. He's got a piston of a jab, and he hurt Rodriguez with a body kick early in their fight. He's really dangerous in the clinch when he gets in close, but that's kind of a double-edged sword in this fight because Tatsuro Taira, his grappling is really where he shines. Like, he likes to stand tall, play on the outside, lots of kicks, sharp counter right hand, but when he gets on the ground, this kid is like a flow state grappler. Hits the body triangle from back, got a tight squeeze on him, really opportunistic with those submissions. But you saw him make a couple of those mistakes in the third round against Candelario in his last fight. And that's the type of spot where I'm going, he's starting to fall apart when he reaches a little bit of adversity. And let's not forget, Candelario is a guy that lost on the Contender Series. He kind of got brought in to prop up Taira in his first fight, in my opinion. And now you've got a guy in Vergara who is criminally underrated, has been his whole UFC run. I know he's coming off a big upset, but people are riding high on Taira. I can't help but feel this is one of those man strength spots where a dirty veteran like CJ Vergara just has the experience and is going to be able to, you know, get into this fight, make Taira uncomfortable, and especially late in the fight when Taira starts to slow down, fade a little bit. We saw it in the Ode Osborne fight. Vergara was coming on strong in that third round. You know, Ode managed to keep hanging on there, made it to the judges' scorecards and got the win, but it was a close call. I could see him doing something like that here against Tatsuro Taira, and we've got a nice plus 195 price tag on him. I wish I had looked at this one earlier. This is a spot where, you know, he opened up. Well, it's down to plus 190 on Superbook Sports, by the way, so more money coming in here on CJ Vergara. So I wish I'd gotten in earlier. He opened up like plus 260 or something like that, and I just think this is a dog or pass spot, Aaron, a prove it to me spot for Tatsuro. I've got all the faith in the world in this kid. I'm not trying to quote unquote fade him because I do think he's got a very bright future, but I can see paths to victory here for CJ. What about you?
You know, it's funny. Every reason you're giving right now for taking Vergara is the same reason I backed Candelario in the last fight. Candelario is a junkyard dog, Boston guy, tough dude, good grappler. And Taira's a young guy, young prospect. And we haven't seen a lot of really good Japanese talent in the UFC for some time. So I thought, you know, maybe this is a good fade spot. Let's see what this kid has. You're going to get good value. I think Candelario was like plus 280 or something. Like good value on a guy that I saw on the Contender Series. A lot of people thought he won that fight. I'm not one of those people, but there were a lot of people that thought that he had done enough to win on the Contender Series. And that's why they brought him in to get a contract. So for all the same reasons that you're giving for Vergara, even though I think Vergara is probably better than Candelario at this stage, I still think that I'm going to go with Taira. I think if he's going to be getting better at the clip in which younger talent tend to get better, now that he's had his first UFC stint, he's been under the hot lights, I think that we're going to see a better version of him here. And I think that even at minus 250, I'd be comfortable parlaying him with some other favorites on the card. Will it bite me? I don't know, but it bit me to take Candelario last time. I really liked what I saw from Taira. Like you said, he started to slow down a little bit at the end, and Vergara is one of these guys where if you give him an inch, he will take a foot. He's really, really good at finding opportunities. So I certainly understand what you're saying there. I just happen to think that Taira is a legit prospect who he kind of reminds me of, why am I forgetting? Hatsu Hayoki. Like, he's long, big for the division. Hayoki, of course, kind of flamed out towards the end of his UFC career. But if you remember when he came to the UFC, he was like this big Japanese prospect, tall, long, rangy. Those are all kind of the same attributes that they're giving to Taira. So we saw that Hatsu Hayoki, even though he had a much better resume in Japan in his Japanese, in the different Japanese promotions he was in before he came to the UFC, I still think that at this stage, Taira, young guy, I think that he's good enough to hang with this level of competition. But I agree with what you're saying about Vergara, very, very tough opponent.
Well, it's funny that you and I ended up taking almost exact opposite courses on this fight, Aaron. Like, similar breakdown, similar thoughts. I was on Tatsuro last time. I thought he was a parlay piece last time, and I got terrified watching that fight. The couple of times he slipped, the couple of times he made mistakes, and now I'm using the same justification on his second fight that you were using on the first fight. It's going to be interesting to see which way this one goes, because I'm glad we at least are kind of reading it the same way, but definitely different from the betting perspective. I won't blame anybody for taking the shot on Tatsuro and believing this kid is going to ride that undefeated streak for a couple more fights.
Yeah, I think that that's probably the way that I'm looking at it here. Until I see him fall, I think that I'm going to keep backing him because I liked what I saw from him in the last fight. But like you said, we had kind of differing experiences. I had Candelario. I thought Taira was the superior fighter from watching it. You had Taira, but you were laying the juice, so you were sweating more than I was. So
Yes.
you have different reads from that perspective because you're emotionally invested.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We got to remember that when it comes to gambling, that last fight bias is always going to be something that kind of haunts us. And that's going to be something that I want to talk about for this next fight here, Aaron. We have got Piera Rodriguez taking on my girl, Sam Page. Sam Hughes in action this week, folks. I forgot to tweet it out. It's Sam Hughes Fight Week. And most of you know I am a little bit biased. I got the signed Sam Hughes walkout shirt up this week, as you must do when your girl is fighting. I am the biggest Sam Page fan, Aaron. I've been beating the drum that she's not as bad as people want to say that she is. Oh, pardon me. That first couple of fights in the UFC, one thing that I really honed in on, Aaron, is that she struggles with hip tosses. You see her go in for that clinch, that body lock. She's a good soldier. She's going to Homer Simpson her way every single fight. She punches her way in. She's willing to eat a couple shots, grabs the underhooks, the body lock, and then just tries to rip you to the floor and beat you into a pulp. And she does that very successfully. I think she's going to have a lot of success doing that against a lot of people. But those first couple fights, you had some girls that could hit the hip toss. And as soon as she gets on that body lock, she's going for a ride. She had no way to defend it, no counter for it. But without the hip toss, she's been very successful in her last couple fights and cashed a couple of underdog tickets for me and even the round 3 sprinkle in her last one. She's doing good work over at Fortis MMA. She's finally got a good, solid head coach. I'm expecting big things from Sam Page. She's going to get better. She's got that relentlessness, that durability. It's going to carry her in some spots. Now, her opponent, on the other hand, Rodriguez, another undefeated prospect coming in here. She survived that first fight against Kay Hansen. Boy, Aaron, did I look like an idiot on that one. I planted my flag. I was like, Kay Hansen is the best bet on the board today. I'm going super deep on this one. I really thought her relentless grappling was going to be something that Rodriguez just wouldn't be able to handle. On the Contender Series, she started fading in round 3 because her opponent really pushed her. She got the win, but it wasn't pretty. You could tell she was struggling. The gas tank seemed to be running a little bit on empty, but she did exactly what it took to get the job done. I thought Kay would be able to expose that, and sure enough, in round 1, took her down 3 times. Like I thought Kay was going to steamroll her way to an easy decision here in that spot, but she completely fell apart. And I have to give props to Rodriguez because for her to take that kind of a first round, shift gears, fight her way back in it, show some excellent IQ, show that she doesn't have the worst gas tank that I thought that she did. Those are all bet on things. Those are all things we want to be looking to back when you're talking about putting your money on a fighter. So awesome prospect here in Rodriguez. I'm extremely torn, Aaron, because I am obviously quite biased. The fan in me wants Sam Hughes to win for everything I've got. The line opened up earlier, and it's been all Sam Hughes' steam. She's about plus 150 right now. You can get minus 170 on Piera Rodriguez, but it looks like that's ticked back just a little bit. She dipped down to plus 140 a little earlier this morning, I believe, and now she's back at plus 150. So some love has come back in on the favorite to push that line back up. And I think for the sake of my wallet, Aaron, I've got to just sit on the sidelines for this one because I think Sam Hughes has the tools to push Rodriguez the way you need to get her to gas out, slow down, and be able to either win a greasy 3-round decision or maybe even get that 3rd-round finish again. But we got to remember the level of competition we're talking about here because Sam Hughes, her last couple fights have been against sketchy competition at best. Like I'm the biggest supporter. The Stella Nunez fight, she kicked some serious ass and shut some people up in that fight. That was fantastic. But Elise Reed has never been good at defending the takedown. So I fully expected Sam Hughes to run through her in that fight. I thought the line was crazy that she was the underdog. Piera Rodriguez is a more caliber fighter than either of those two. Strong hips, physical. I believe Sam Hughes can win this fight. But I don't think I want to put my money on her this week because I know I'm emotionally invested. How do you feel about this one? I'd love to see a very, clear perspective from somebody who doesn't have the same bias as me.
Yeah, well, let me help you out with this one because I think that my analysis will actually put you in a good place. So I was on the opposite side of that Kay Hansen fight with Piera. I took Piera Rodriguez in that fight. I think Piera Rodriguez is an excellent prospect. I think she's got really, really good striking, but the one hole in her game, like you mentioned, is kind of her grappling and her cardio. So when I look at this particular matchup, that's what this is. This is a matchup sport. We have to always look at that. You can look at, oh, great prospect, undefeated. You have to look at the different things that will determine how this fight goes. And for Sam Hughes, I thought she looked career best with Saif Sayoud as her coach. I think that is what she needed, was that missing ingredient, somebody to get in her ear in between rounds and tell it like it is. And I think that this version of Sam Hughes can give Piera Rodriguez a lot of problems, because I think that if Sam Hughes is able to implement the same game plan that she did against Nunes, and I think Nunes has very similar characteristics to Piera Rodriguez, I think that in terms of her, fighting style and the matchup itself, I actually think that this is kind of a dog or pass. I think that Sam Hughes in this situation, if she's able to implement the game plan, and like you mentioned, she's willing to take shots to get inside. And I think that's the exact kind of game plan you need against someone like Piera Rodriguez, who's long, who's good with distance control. But we're talking small cage here, and we're talking about somebody who is coming off a career best performance against Piera Rodriguez, who has looked good and bad in her different spots. If you go on Fight Pass, you can see a really good story about Piera Rodriguez and everything she's gone through and how she's sleeping in the gym and that she's dedicated her life to this. And it's a really good feel-good story. But at the same time, you got to put all that stuff aside, look at the matchup itself. And in this situation, I think that Hughes is probably, from a stylistic standpoint, has a lot of advantages here. And that's why I would call it a dog or pass.
Okay. Aaron, I like to hear that. It doesn't take a whole lot to tempt me into either taking a dog or backing my girl Sam Page. So I might end up on the train by Saturday. We'll see what happens, but I'm very tempted. We do see, like you mentioned, similar stylistic matchup, because Rodriguez, she's a little pot shotty. She's not overly active. I think that comes from a bit of those cardio concerns that we talked about. She really tries to kind of have a measured pace, and she does throw a lot of kicks. And Sam Page showed in not the last fight, but the one before that she actually is pretty solid at taking those leg kicks and turning them into takedowns. So I could see that being an opening for her. I might be right. Might be right. Shout out my guy MMA Locker Room saying I'm betting Clint's girl Hughes to pay the dues. All right. Me and Locker Room are almost never on the same page, folks. Like we joke about it in the DMs because we're always head to head. So if we're agreeing on something, hopefully that's a good sign for my girl and our wallets. Next fight up, everybody. We've got Joanderson Brito taking on Lucas Alexander. And Joanderson Brito was actually slated to fight my guy Melsik Badsarian, I believe, this week. So we've got Lucas as a short notice replacement here. And I wanted that first fight, Aaron. That would have been an absolute banger, that original matchup. I hope we get back to that at some point. Joanderson Brito, 13-3-1. Lucas Alexander 7-2. Brito is just one of these muscular monsters, right? He's explosive. He closes the range. Lost a cardio war to Bill Adjo. You can't really knock him too much for that, but he smoked Andre Fili in round 1. And that was a fight that I took a very strong stance on Andre Fili. If he could survive round 1, I thought he was going to take over that fight. Didn't survive round 1. So it is what it is. This guy walks forward and throws heaters. That's basically all he does. And then once he gets your back, underrated jiu-jitsu game. He tries to, club and sub you to the ground, or he'll climb you like a tree, get those hooks in, get the body triangle. Big finisher, Joanderson Brito. Lucas Alexander taking this fight on short notice. Like I mentioned, he just beat Jacob Kilburn, a name that some of you may recognize from the UFC and the PFL over in the Pettis FC. So Anthony Pettis' organization that he just got started. It's his UFC debut, and he's fighting out of Fusion XL. This guy's got big, powerful kicks, Aaron, switches stances, plays with his hands low. That always worries me. I feel like those guys are always going to get chinned at some point, but he's got that good, strong, deep kick to the body to control the space and the distance, and then he switches to short, straight punches when people get in close. I like Alexander's game. Overall, there's not a lot for me to complain about here. I do have to give a little bit of an asterisk, though, on the Kilburn fight, because I actually I do some sports lining for Spectation Sports. They're doing regional MMA shows and things like that, Aaron. And Kilburn has obviously fallen from grace. He dropped down to the regional shows, and I got to line one of his fights very recently. Got the insider information on it, and he's like, unfortunately, in life on the struggle bus. He's having a hard time losing his faith in his fighting ability, picked up a second job again to continue fighting, like just in a very, very bad place. And he broke his arm blocking a kick in that fight. So like one of those fluke freak type of situations, already not a very good win. And then for it to end in that kind of a matter, like, I don't know how much weight I put into him actually beating a guy like Jacob Kilburn. And when he ends up in these grappling situations, he showed decent takedown defense, but Alexander kind of gives up his back a little bit in situations. He's got 2 losses on his record by sub. With the short notice nature of this fight and what we've seen from Brito, I want to see the sub prop, Aaron. When that line comes out, I want to know what the submission prop looks like, because I could see Brito clubbing this guy to the mat or just taking advantage of that back position that he tends to give up. When these fighters come in on short notice, there's not much of a game plan, right? Like, they tend to just kind of do what they do best. You're not going to get a training camp. You're not going to study your opponent a whole lot. So I kind of expect him to make some of the mistakes we've seen him make on the regional scene again once he's in the cage. I'll side with Brito here in this spot, but I'm not sure how confident I feel about it, because honestly, like I said before, I do like the overall game from Lucas Alexander, and I think he very well could have a home here in the UFC in the future.
Yeah, I did a little bit of research on Lucas today, and like you mentioned, he's over at Fusion XL, which is a good camp. I kind of just need to see the line before I can really make a determination on this one. I mean, if I'm making a straight pick, I'm going to go with Brito. But what's the number, right? Like, what's the number where I'm going to look at Lucas Alexander and that there's going to be enough value for me to take him? I think this is one of those situations where you wait on the sidelines until Friday. You wait to see where the steam goes. You see that Brito's coming off that big win over Andre Fili. It was an impressive win over a guy who's bounced back since. I think he's going to get a lot of love from the public. So if that number gets up to the 400, anywhere between plus 350 and better for Lucas Alexander, that's where I'm going to start looking at a dog spot. But I think that Brito has so many advantages in this fight. He's got a full camp under his belt. Alexander's taking this fight to get into the promotion. But from what I've seen from Lucas Alexander, young guy, continues to get better. Again, training at a pretty good camp over at Fusion XL. So what's the number, right? Like, if it's plus 350 or better, I might have to take a longer look. But for now, I just kind of have to wait and see what the line says.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate, everybody. The reason we don't have a super solid read for you here is because we don't know the number. There is no number at this point. With these short notice shuffles, we tend to not know for a little bit. So probably in a couple days, we'll get a line. We'll kind of take it from there. It'll be interesting to see where they end up putting this one, because Aaron, that's a great point. You end up having somebody who has a big win like that and their opponent looks good in their next fight. That tends to attract attention. So we'll see what ends up happening here, everybody. I can't wait to see where the bookies end up lining that one. But I think Joanderson Brito is probably a half decent sized favorite. And I wouldn't mind him up to like maybe like a minus 175, minus 180 type of point. But if he comes out and he's minus 250, minus 300, something like that, then we're talking probably a pass situation for me, because I don't think I want this dog in this particular fight, but I wouldn't blame anybody for taking the shot if they feel like the line's a little bit too wide, because he is a very talented young fighter. All right, everybody, we are here at Pub Sports Radio. I'm joined by none other than the legend himself, Aaron Bronsteter. Thank you all for coming on the show. Trying to work through this thing quickly so I don't absolutely destroy my throat and let Aaron get back to his family here on a Canadian holiday. Next fight up, Nick Maximov taking on Jacob Malkoun. And I'll be honest with you, Aaron, this is a fight that I didn't dive into as hard as I usually do with the tape study, just because these two guys are grapple, right? Like Nick Maximov, it looked like he was kind of a little bit of a bust after his last fight. Everybody expected a whole lot of big things from this kid, and then he drops a bad fight via guillotine against a guy that looked like maybe, I mean, obviously in the UFC, there are no setup fights, but it looked like it was a good matchup for him, and he dropped the ball. So he needs a bounce back here. He's the Diaz protege, like the guy that people are looking for. Jacob Malkoun, this guy is another just wrestle nonstop, relentless grappling. His last fight, he's also coming off of a loss, and a lot of people should have cashed that 10-1 Malkoun by decision. That Allen fight was razor thin close. Anybody that made that bet I feel so bad. I know a couple people personally that had that ticket in hand, and I feel like maybe you should have got it. That fight was very close, very competitive. But Jacob Malkoun did make a couple of grappling mistakes in that fight, and it put him on bottom a couple times. And I feel like that's in the end what cost him that fight. Now, I'm not the foremost wrestler in the world. My guy at Bets and Picks MMA, Andrew, most of y'all know him. I'm going to touch base with him a little bit later in this week, because not only is he a former wrestler himself, but he actually tracks and keeps does a lot of betting with like the Olympic wrestling and stuff like that. I'm going to ask him who the better wrestler is, but to my eyes, it seems a little bit like Maximov might have a slight edge here, but I am not going to lose money doubting Jacob Malkoun after what he's done the last couple fights. This could be a grappler versus grappler, terrible kickboxing matchup, or these guys are going to stick to each other like glue for 15 straight minutes. Aaron, what do you think about this one? And do you have a read on it? Because I really don't.
Well, the read that I have on fights like this usually is if you've got two fighters that are very, very stylistically similar, a lot of what they're going to do is offset. And then if we're going to look at the striking, Malkoun versus Maximov, I might favor Malkoun in the striking realm, as weird as that is to say. I mean, this is a guy who does have KO victories under his belt, rather. So it's just one of those ones where I feel like this should be an even money fight. I don't really see a lot of advantages either way. So I would take the Malkoun side here at plus 125 on that's the number on FanDuel right now. Like, I think that's probably the safest route here, because I think that this is a fight where there's not going to be much that happens in terms of damage. It's not going to be much that happens in terms of grappling advantages. It's one of those ones where it's kind of a coin flip fight. And if you're going to give me a decent underdog number for a coin flip fight, I'll take the underdog number. But it's not nothing I feel too passionately about. I feel like you're going to be sweating if you take either side here. The one thing I would do is if you're looking for like a parlay piece, fight starts round 3 is probably going to be like minus 300. If you want to parlay that with something, I feel like you could pretty comfortably do that. I don't think we're going to see an early finish in this one, but even still, and you know what, a lot of people say, well, that's it's very chalky, but I like chalk spots like that, like ones where you're going into it and you're pretty comfortable thinking this is probably going to happen, like that fight starting round 3. I feel like that's one of those ones where you could lay that and parlay it with some other things that you like to get even money. But I don't really have a strong read on the fight either way, because like I said, I think it's kind of a coin flip, so I'll take the underdog, but it's nothing that I would hang my hat on.
I hear you there. I absolutely hear you. Jacob Malkoun is a plus 125 underdog. Nick Maximov is minus 145. Slight disagreement. All side favorite. Aaron's going to side dog, but I again don't feel confident at all. I don't mind that fight starts round 3 prop, though. The over probably will be chalked, will be juicy. Hard to see either of these guys finishing. They've both proven to be really durable. Neither of them have shown like a ton of knockout power, maybe some submission upside. However, again, they both shown really solid submission defense. So I don't mind that look. Maybe take the split decision prop when that comes out, because this one could get hairy. If the judges have no idea what they're looking at on this one, and these two guys scrambled around the cage for 15 minutes, it could be a close one.
Yeah, that's a good call. I like that split. I'll have to see what the number is on that one. That's a solid read.
The standard usually is like 4-1. It's usually like a plus 400. If it's a fight that they're expecting not to go the distance, you'll get 6, 7, 8 to 1, something like that. On this kind of a fight, I'd probably expect the plus 400, plus 450, because it looks like a close fight on paper.
Yeah, it's a tough one to peg for sure.
Yeah. All right, everybody, here we go. Next up, Raphael Assunção taking on Victor Henry. We have got the old dog himself. Raphael Assunção has been around absolutely forever, right? Dude is this close to legend status. He has been a consummate contender, just one of those guys that's always been on the edge, can't quite get there. And then the fall from glory. He's on a bad run right now, Aaron, the poor guy. And it looks like he's shot. It really does. Like, I hate to say that, but the chin appears to be gone. He's got 4 losses in a row, 3 of those 4 by finish. And he made Ricky Simon look like Anderson Silva. Like, the way Ricky Simon was moving his head and then came across with that huge counter right. Like, that's exactly the kind of shot that, old Raphael Assunção would either have avoided or at least been able to take. Just not anymore. He's just downhill fast right now. And they were really throwing him to a UFC newcomer in Victor Henry. I don't want to say to the wolves, really, because, Victor Henry's no spring chicken. He's 35 years old himself, but shut me up. He shocked the world coming in and doing what he did to Hani Barcelos in his last fight. Extremely impressive for him to come in and do that against a guy that a lot of us hold in very high esteem. And on top of that, he was hurting Hani Barcelos. He's got that step-in knee that he would change it up to every once in a while. He did take a couple of big right hands when he would kind of slip and rip, duck off to the side, and Hani was able to time it. And I kind of looked at that and I was like, man, I feel like if you jump in a time machine 4 years ago, Raphael Assunção is the type of guy that would take advantage of that dip. He'd be able to time that dip off to the side, but he's always been more of a decision guy. Never really got the KO power, that kind of a thing. So I feel like this is going to be if Raphael Assunção comes out and tries to grind his way to a win, decision is maybe his only option, but this seems like a Victor Henry spot. I don't know if you see anything differently from that. He's a minus 340 favorite. Assunção is a plus 280 dog. The only thing is I could see Victor Henry maybe working his way to a decision here. I don't really want to get too deep into the method of victory because, like I said, some of those shots that he landed in his last fight, he absolutely could put away maybe this version of Raphael Assunção.
Well, I've got to take a look at a couple things here. First off, we talk about Assunção's 4-fight losing streak. These are all ranked guys. Like, I mean, Cody Garbrandt right now isn't, but he's a former champion. We've got a former champion. We've got Corey Sandhagen, who's one of the top guys in the division. We've got Marlon Rice, who at the time was coming on, like he was about to fight for the championship. And then most recently, Ricky Simón, who's coming off of the biggest, one of the biggest wins of his career against Jack Shore. Like, this guy's ranked as well. Now you look at Victor Henry. He was a huge underdog in that last fight against Barcelos, and he over-delivered. But are we overcorrecting the steering wheel a little bit here? Because Henry's now minus 350. We saw Barcelos look good again recently, but at the same time, Assunção has always been the type of guy that fights people close and doesn't really look bad in fights unless he's getting knocked out, which never happened until recently.
Yeah.
So unless Victor Henry's going to finish this guy, I expect Assunção to hang with him. And if Assunção hangs with him, you're going to give me plus 500 on an Assunção decision. I think there's a little bit of value there. Like, if you're trying to extricate value from this fight, that might be it, because Assunção has fought many people better than Victor Henry. Maybe not this incarnation of Assunção, who's 40 years old. Believe me, I'm not looking at the Assunção of the past and thinking that he's going to be reincarnated here. But at the same time, like you mentioned, Victor Henry's 35. He has a lot of experience fighting, has, a very big resume in his own right, and he's just getting into the UFC. This could be an overcorrection of the steering wheel, and that always worries me. That's the way that I'm approaching this. Is I'm either totally passing, or I'm going to take Assunção by decision, just a little bit of a sprinkle, in case Assunção just has a little bit of life left in him, and maybe Henry perhaps either overperformed in that last spot, or Barcelos underperformed in that last spot, because this to me seems like a really big number.
I don't mind that at all, Aaron. I really don't. And I might be falling into that trap of, jumping on the young guy that looked fantastic, or not a young guy that looked great in his last fight, because I completely agree with you. The problem is this year, more so than any, this process has not worked for me. Fading guys with an elder statesman. I don't know what it is, Aaron, but in 2022, the changing of the guard just seems to be a thing. Like, all these young fighters that are taking on the old bucks, I couldn't hit water if I fell out of a boat trying to bet the older dogs to come back and get one more win and try and right the ship. Like, they're just not doing it this year. And I have been betting them hand over fist this season. So I'm not doing it, because I completely hear what you're saying. I like the read. Like I said, I kind of caught a couple spots where Raphael can maybe take advantage of this guy. But I've been burned one too many times trying that already this year. So I am not going to go back to the well here with Raphael Assunção. It's a big step up for Victor Henry. It's essentially a step down for our guy, Raphael Assunção. Like you mentioned, he's been fighting only contender, champion, or future champion type of fighters. So definitely going to be an interesting fight. And again, Aaron, I'm going to go back to the well here, though. Wouldn't mind a sprinkle on the split. Because if Raphael Assunção does some of that grappling that he's known for, if these guys get into a competitive kickboxing match, it might be volume versus big moments. I think this could be a close fight if Assunção's chin holds up. I'm just not banking on that anymore, because like I said, every single time I seem to go for one of these guys and try and see if they will keep it together, they don't. So this is a complete stay off for me, but I will absolutely wish you luck. And I love the ballsy call on Assunção by decision.
Here's my question. I don't usually doubt the matchmakers, because they do a great job for the most part. They're really good at setting these matches up. But why not do Jonathan Martinez against Victor Henry and Assunção versus Cub Swanson? Like, I don't understand why you don't just make those the fights. Like, you got two much more competitive fights if you match them up that way, because this is Cub Swanson's bantamweight debut. If you take Cub Swanson and you put him up against Assunção, now you're giving Cub Swanson a good opportunity to show what he has at 135 pounds. Because when you're facing Assunção right now, you get to really show what you have. And if Assunção ends up beating him, so be it. But I think Jonathan Martinez versus Victor Henry is a much better fight too. Just saying. I mean, I know we're going to get to Cub Swanson a little bit later on, but I feel like that would have been a better way to book these guys.
I'm right there with you, Aaron. And like I said, they're really doing, the UFC is super into this high turnover, kill or be killed. I think they're trying to get rid of some of these contracts, if we're being honest. Some of these guys that have been around for years and they're getting paid, $100K to show, $100K to win. I think they're trying to get them off the books is what's happening. So I like that fight a lot better myself. And I do think giving some of these guys, veterans, a fair shake at their first fight in the division. That'd be the way to go. I like that a lot better.
But if you do Cub versus Assunção, you're getting one of them off the books anyways. You're guaranteed to get one of them off the books.
Yeah, that's true also. You know what? Let's put a call in. You can take over. I like it.
I'll send
seem to know what you're talking about.
And I just ask him what's going on.
I do like it. And hey, Evan, don't worry about the trolls too much. Real quick, I do want to take a short break here. Capper Tracker, I know. You know, the trolls love to talk about the ROI. I already said I'm getting my ass kicked this year. I have not done well in 2022. I will fully admit that. But just so everyone knows, and I normally don't address these types of comments, but 2019, when the podcast started, plus 19.88 units. 2020, I had a bad year, minus 10.86 units. 2021, plus 34.93 units. My friend, I'm positive lifetime betting MMA, and that's why people come around and hang out. The analysis is there. I'm your fun neighborhood degenerate. I always tell people, don't tail me unless you want to go on the roller coaster with me, because there are far better gamblers out there than me. I'm a guy who loves MMA and likes to gamble. So tail or fade responsibly. Bankroll management, key number one, making sure you don't go broke. If you want to ride with me, great. If you don't want to ride with me, no problem. But the fact is, people thinking I'm awful because I'm having one bad year. Long-term game, baby. Long-term game. So no sweat. Drop in the bucket. We're going to keep on doing this thing. And regardless, win, lose, or draw, you'll find me right here in this seat, never running away from a bad result. So hang around. Have some fun. Next fight up, we got Martinez taking on Brandon Davis. And Aaron, oh my gosh. Like, I swear somebody put a call in for this card, because it's just a compilation of maybe some of the worst reads I've ever had over the last year of my MMA gambling, because Brandon Davis, he's a guy that I was all about, wanted to just hammer him when he made his return to the UFC. He went on a real tough run his first time around, dropped a couple split decisions, showed some flashes of brilliance, but then got cut, in my opinion, maybe a little too early. He was a guy that had never been finished before. He's a BJJ black belt, slick Muay Thai. He's got everything you want to be a good, solid fighter. Comes back on his UFC debut, and I'm thinking he's going to outclass this guy. And he makes one of the worst fight IQ decisions I've ever seen and decides to stand in front of Danaa Bakkarel and gets his first KO loss of his entire career. Not great. I am really getting, what's the name of the guy last week that I went back to war with and shouldn't have? Shoot, it's for some reason Ronnie is the only name. Jesse Ronson. Jesse Ronson last week. He's giving me massive Jesse Ronson vibes, Aaron. Like, maybe he flared out the first time because he wasn't quite UFC caliber. You know, he came back again and he's just going through the motions again, as you know, and I don't want to insult the guy. I'm a huge fan of his. I like him. Obviously, he'd kick my ass any day of the week. But I just don't think he's going to be able to put it together at this point at the UFC level. He's a big 135er. He managed to cut down, drop a weight class. You got to wonder if that affected his durability. Like I said, last fight was his first KO loss on his entire career. He's extremely well-rounded, and this is a fight that I think potentially he could possibly win. Martinez moved out to Glory MMA, so you love to see him working with a brain like James Krause over there, but he's not really a minute winner. You know, he's coming off a split decision win over Guido Canetti and then a loss to Ronnie Lawrence. Ronnie had him 2017 in that fight, dominated those first two rounds, and then he nearly killed him in the third round. He throws big spinning back fists, you know, all that kind of stuff. He's a finisher, but I don't see him ticking away the minutes, and that's where a guy like Brandon Davis, I think he'll be more active. I think he'll be more aggressive. He could be winning those minutes, but he always tends to fight close. He fights to his opponent's strengths, give them an opportunity to fight their way back into the fight. And now that he's been cracked that one time, you got to wonder if that durability is gone. You know, at his age, with the wear and tear on his body, you got to wonder if that's something that's going to be something that comes back to haunt him yet again, especially against a young power hitter like Martinez. I do not like the favorite tag here on Martinez. It's a closely lined fight, plus 135 on Brandon Davis, minus 155 on Martinez. I just don't like it because if it goes 15 minutes again, Aaron, I think this is going to be a close fight. Martinez could catch him with one of these big shots, starch him. You know, the old dog's cutting his way down to 135 again could continue to be a problem. Maybe he pays off that minus 155 price tag with flying colors. But I've also tried to bet Martinez and then been sweating my ticket in that third round, praying he gets it done over 45-year-old Guido Canetti. So you tell me, Aaron, how do you feel about this one?
It's so funny. You and I have so much in common because I felt exactly the same way about Brandon Davis. I was happy to see him back in the UFC. I thought he was going to have a workman-like performance and just, again, show that veteran savvy, like you mentioned, against Benabat Garay. Was unable to. And you also mentioned the vibe from Jesse Ronson. I was on the Ronson KO prop last event rather, as well.
Glad it wasn't just me.
Yeah, because this is a guy that was, Joaquin Silva was a guy that had just gotten knocked out badly in his last 2 fights, and Ronson's got good power, great precision. I thought it was a really good matchup for him. This time around, though, I'm on the Mana Martinez side. I just don't know how much Brandon Davis has left, and I really didn't like what I saw from him in the last fight. Now, this is kind of a risky move because, like you said, Mana Martinez is something of a front runner, and I think that Brandon Davis is the kind of guy that, if he shows up and he looks like he used to, he returns the form, I could be looking mighty dumb for taking Mana Martinez. But I think the price tag is probably about where it should be. Like, I would probably line this at Mana Martinez about minus 175, based on what we've seen from these two guys recently. And I thought that what we saw from Mana Martinez was very encouraging in that last round against Ronnie Lawrence. I thought that Ronnie Lawrence was a little bit exposed by Mana Martinez. And the more that he works with James Krause, the better he's going to become. I think that this is, and he was also coming into his, not the past fight, but the fight before that was like a pretty heavy heart as coach Saul Solis had passed away, right? Like, I mean, I think that him moving over to train with James Krause is a great move for him. And I always like to go with fighters that are training at good camps. I'm going to go with Mana Martinez here, but it's nothing I'm too strong, nothing I would, again, it's not a hill I'm willing to die on, but I think that's my lean for this particular fight.
I hear you. And we talked about that at the beginning of the show, right, Aaron? This is a tough fight to call. The whole card, it's littered with landmines. This is a hard spot to be confident in. I'll agree with you. Mana Martinez working with James Krause. I like that. Hopefully he can harness this raw, young talent. But the kid's got like an 18% takedown defense. That's another thing, that if Brandon Davis comes out to grapple, he could look minus 500 here. So I don't know. I'm just going to leave this one alone. I'm going to watch it. I'm going to see if Brandon has anything left in the tank. As a fan, I hope he does. If Mana Martinez comes out and shows new wrinkles in his game, this kid could be something. He's massive for the division. He usually enjoys a height and reach advantage. Brandon Davis actually is going to match him for size and have a 2-inch reach advantage on him. So it's going to be interesting to see how he handles being the ever so slightly smaller fighter for the first time, maybe in the UFC. I'm going to take notes on this one, Aaron. I'm going to just sit back and watch.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Right,
I think this is a wait and see. See what we've got from these two guys at this stage in their career. It's one of those kind of. This is the fight where we kind of see where these two guys are at. It's one of these litmus tests.
Absolutely. All right, guys, moving along, keeping a brisk pace here today. Misha Cirkunov taking on Alonzo Menifield. And Aaron, I learned something this week. I learned that Alonzo Menifield is 35 years old. I was shocked. I apologize. 34. I don't want to age the man, make him a middle of the road 35. He's 34. Like, for some reason, my brain told me that he was like maybe 30, 31, something like that. Like, I thought he was a young prospect. My brain kept telling me that, but he is 34 years old. And yeah, Evan in the chat right here, never backing Misha again in my life. Same, buddy. Same. Doing the tape study for this one, Aaron, breaks my heart every time, because Misha Cirkunov is another one of those hills that I died on, and you just simply do not lose to Wellington Turman. I put a massive wager on him. I planted my flag. Wellington Turman is one of my favorite fades in the entire world. Misha had him dead to rights, was beating him up at the end of the first round, and then gives up the flukiest armbar I've ever seen. Like, how does a guy with the jiu-jitsu credentials of Misha Cirkunov give up that kind of an armbar in a fight that he's dominating? It killed my soul right there. I don't like it. Misha Cirkunov has been really a one-rounder bust, kill or be killed fighter, right? Since I think 2016, he hasn't gotten out of the first round in the UFC. Like, this guy he either taps you or gets knocked out, and that's been his whole run, except for Jocko, because Jocko gonna Jocko, right? His fights never finish, except for his last one with Brendan Allen. Atomic Alonzo Menifield, he is another just bottom of the barrel 205er, a guy that I would like to be on every opportunity that I get, but he's on a nice little win streak here. 3-1 his last 4, but that 4, Aaron, it's Askar Fradiev, Ed Herman, Fabio Charant. Like, it is harder to get a grosser win streak than that. And his losses are coming to guys like Will Knight and Devin Clark, other measuring stick type of fighters in
It's
this
like Misha
division.
Cirkunov level, right? Like that's the
Yeah,
level that Cirkunov's at right now at 205.
that's
So
exactly
that's the
how.
tricky part about this fight.
That's what's rough about it. And Menifield is a minus 210 favorite. Misha Cirkunov is a plus 180. Aaron, they're trying to get me to bet Misha Cirkunov. You know, you go back and you watch that Will Knight fight, and it's apparent that Alonzo Menifield does not grapple. This guy doesn't have any idea what to do when he gets put on his back. He just bench presses his opponents up off him, even like full arm extended. Any of my jiu-jitsu players here in the chat are going to know Misha will rip that thing right off. Like, his technique is awful. And if Menifield had anybody but Will Knight on his back, he would have been tapping quickly in that last fight. Unfortunately, my guy Will Knight is a little too stubby to pull that submission off. I like violence in this spot. I like the under 1.5. There's a lot of love for that in the chat already here. Shout out to you guys betting the under 1.5, just because that's kind of the way that Misha tends to go. And Alonzo Menifield, Aaron, moved out to Colorado for this camp. He's not training at Fortis. He decided to sign up and work with Pat Barry as his head coach for this one. And that's a giant red flag to me. Like, if I needed any more red flags, that's a red flag right there. I mean, I'm probably going to end up having something on Misha Cirkunov by sub just because of what the tape has shown me. Alonzo Menifield is there to be had when it comes to the grappling. But if Menifield nukes Misha with the first punch he throws, I'm not going to be shocked. Violence is probably the answer here, Aaron. That's probably the best thing we can do is just bet the under 1.5 and pray.
Yeah, Misha by sub, and I'll be closing my eyes. I mean, I think that there's a lot of value on that. Right now it's at plus 400. We'll see where it goes. But I mean, like, that's kind of his only path, right? I don't think he's going to knock him out. He's certainly not going to win a decision. So I think that you're getting a little bit of extra value on that sub prop. And listen, like you're saying, Menifield, if he lands the right shot, he's going to be able to put Misha out if it connects. But when Misha loses and he gets knocked out, it's the really high caliber guys for the most part, like the explosiveness of Johnny Walker. And that was Misha took that fight while his wife was battling cancer. I mean, we got to remember that. You know, he got knocked out by Glover in a fight that he actually had a little bit of success against Glover early. You know, I like the under 1.5 as well. I think that's a good read, especially at I think it's minus 130 right now. I'll probably look at that as well. But Misha by sub is the way that I'm going to go with this one. And like I said, I'll close my eyes. But you know what? I know what I'm getting into here, and I think that's a good enough price because I feel like I'm almost getting Misha at plus 400 because I think that's really the path to victory for him, unless it ends up being like a takedown, a ground and pound type situation. But I think Misha loves getting subs. Like nothing he enjoys more than locking up a submission. He really needs a win here. This is like do or die for him. Like this is win or go home.
Absolutely.
I'm going to take it. Again, I'm going to close my eyes. I've always liked Misha. He's a very sharp guy, but he's also, I don't think, training at Extreme Couture anymore either. He's kind of doing his own kind of makeshift stuff in Vegas, which is also a red flag, right? So
yeah,
let's see how it goes. But I'm gonna ride with Misha one more time here. Take the sub prop.
Oof. Yeah, I mean, you, me, and my guy, Uncle Wheezy in the chat thinking the same way that it just, oh boy, you're just giving us the price on this one. This is that spot where, you know, the professional gamblers will tell you bet numbers, not teams. Like, that's kind of what we got to do here. Alonzo Menifield should never be minus 210 over anybody. And I agree with you, Aaron, that path to victory for the sub prop is probably really the only path to victory for him. Every once in a while, Misha will do the like the hooks in, ground and pound type of thing. But I think Menifield is too tough for that. I think that he'll roll, he'll give up his back, he'll stick his arm out there. You know, the ref won't pull someone like Misha off when he's pounding on a guy like that. Will end up getting a submission rather than getting the ground and pound TKO or something like that. So violence under 1.5, like I said, definitely probably the way to look first, but then maybe that money line sprinkle and maybe that submission prop at plus 400, because why not? What's up, Mushroom? See you in the chat. I appreciate it. How's it going, Dirty Reg? Love everybody rolling in to check out the show. Guys, do us a favor, smash that like button. As always, we appreciate the love and support. Next up, whoa, man, we're talking about, you know, fade central this week here, Aaron. We have got Duško Todorović taking on Jordan Wright. And I love me some Beverly Hills Ninja, but this guy is the definition of a glass cannon. He's got all offense, all output, cannot take a shot. And even when he finally gets an opportunity to do something different, you know, he's working, I guess, with Vladimir Matyushenko for the OGs. You're all going to remember that name. Exactly. He's been working with Vladdy trying to get that offensive wrestling going, and he really went to that in his last fight, something that we've seen Marc-Andre Barrios struggle with before, and it looked like he was starting to have a little success with it. stuck his neck out just a little too far, and Marc-Andre Barrel gets the first submission of his career. So I feel for the guy dropping that spot. It seemed like he came in with a good game plan, changing things up, protecting that chin a little bit, and he still got out of there in the first round somehow. You can't go wrong with violence here with this man. Jordan Wright is going to find a way to finish the fight or get himself finished one way or the other. And Duško, I have not had a bunch of good reads this year, Aaron, but Duško is one of those guys that I marked as a fade. He's got tall man defense. He relies on his chin, and he's not very durable. We've seen signs of it, and I was like, man, the UFC kids are going to eat this guy up. He's 1-3 in his last 4 with his only win coming over Maki Pitolo. He's decently well-rounded. He also likes to go to the offensive grappling. And honestly, Aaron, that's when he does his best work. When he gets people down to the ground, that ground and pound is hellacious. He just unloads on people from top position. But as long as he's striking, like I said, he relies on that head movement, but he's a little slow and he's a little hittable. It doesn't really work out all that well for him. And you saw in his last fight with Chidi, he almost got folded up with those knees to the body from Chidi. And that's something that Jordan Wright goes to religiously. His clinch and his knees to the body, to the head. That's something that he absolutely goes to constantly. Duško Todorović is another one of these big inflated favorites. And I'm seeing a lot of love for him in the market. And honestly, Aaron, it's another price tag thing. Never in my lifetime will I lay minus 200 on Duško. Pre-tape, before I got into the study, I kind of looked at it and I was like, yeah, Duško's the side, right? Duško's got to be the side. Started watching everything, and I was like, oh, God bless anybody paying minus 200 for this, man. If there's anybody that Jordan Wright can knock out, I think it's somebody like Duško Todorović. So this fight is going to be a one-round massacre, and the bookies opened it up like under 1.5, minus 135. I think it's like minus 200 to the under 1.5 now. It's just been a flood. The bettors punishing the bookies for opening that up incorrectly. So yeah, I'm expecting violence early, Aaron. And just like last time, it's a hold your nose in Beverly Hills Ninja spot if you're betting it, in my opinion. If I'm betting either of these sides, it's going to be Jordan Wright. If I'm betting anything in this fight, it's violence.
Well, you can get Wright by KO in round 1 at plus 800. Like, that's a good number.
Oh, baby.
Like, I mean, if you want to get a good prop, if you want to throw a dart, it could do worse than that. I mean, Jordan Wright has the shortest average fight time in UFC history of any active fighter right now that's fought 5 times or more. It's 2 minutes and 23 seconds average fight time. I think this fight's going to go under, but there's one prop that FanDuel often offers, which is how does the fight end? I'm going to probably take fight ends by KO. Like, I'll see what it's at. If it's like minus 130 or something, I think fight ends by KO is probably a good prop to have in this one, regardless of who's going to win, because whoever wins this fight is probably going to win by KO. So there are a bunch of props that I'm going to wait for in this one. But I kind of agree with you. I think this might be a dog or pass situation, to be perfectly honest. And I think that I might look at that Wright by KO round 1 at plus 800, because I think that is going to be the way he does it. Like, I mean, you could also look at the round 2 prop as well. And like, it's that one's up. You can get Wright by round 2 KO at plus 1200. You can take both of those if you want, right? Like, I'll pick a spot. I'm going to look for a prop to go with. It's just all the props aren't up yet, but I'll find a prop that I like in this fight. I know I'll find the prop that I like in this fight.
I think that's the move. And honestly, that round 1 at plus 800, I don't mind that whatsoever, because that's his whole damn win condition right there. Now, Duško does do the thing where he sticks his neck out a little too far on takedowns as well. So right by sub is possible, but this guy prefers to work with his hands. So I think I would kind of risk it on that knockout prop, unless got to check the price tags, guys. Shop around, check the price tags, because sometimes a guy is so KO heavy that the inside the distance is damn near the same price. If you're getting inside the distance at like plus 175 and knockout is plus 200, give up the 25 cents. Like, if that club and sub happens, you don't want to be shredding up your ticket because of a 25-cent difference. Now, if it's plus 150 versus plus 250, go ahead, pick your path to victory, have at it. But if it's one of those ones that's super razor thin close and they set it that way, take the inside the distance just in case a sub were to happen. But yeah, this one, hard to have too strong of an opinion on, but it's another spot where I think that, oh God, I just can't trust Duško at this price tag, Aaron.
Yeah, I'm with you.
All right, folks, we got just a couple more fights to break down here. We're getting to the good stuff. The final 3, go ahead, do us a favor, smash the like button. I'm sure you're already following a guy like Aaron on Twitter, but if you're not, make sure you go check him out. Love the content that he puts out there every single week. Next up, Askar Askarov taking on Brandon Raw Dog Royval. Oh, that's my guy right there. So rocking the Kaikara France t-shirt today for the show just because of this fight being on the card. Shout out to my guy Sean Knuckle. He went to a UFC event earlier this year and got this shirt for me and sent it to me. So thank you, Sean. Askarov, Kaikara France made him his son in his last fight in a spot that I never saw coming, Aaron. Askarov was my uncrowned king. Like, I'm the biggest Moreno fan of all time, but I thought that Askar was destined for the belt. I thought that guys like Kaikara were not going to be an issue for him. That chain grappling, that relentless takedown, underrated boxing. Like, I really expected him to just do work in that fight, and instead he got outclassed. He's going to have a 1-inch reach disadvantage to my guy Brandon Royval, and if there's anybody in this division that I am more a fan of, maybe second only to the champion Brandon Moreno, it's Brandon Royval. I love the way this guy fights, Aaron. He is barely controlled chaos. He forces his opponent to fight in fights where there's no technique, no thought process. You never know what's coming next, and he just thrives in that zone. Spinning elbows, flying attacks, opportunistic submissions, chaining sub attacks. Like, you never know what's coming with Brandon Royval. The problem is, I worry a little bit about his defense because obviously he puts himself in the fire literally purposefully. And then he also has a bit of a durability concern. That shoulder is something that's a constant problem. He took some time off before this fight, I guess because he had just mounting injuries that he needed to give himself a break for. And he has not done that since the UFC signed him. Like, he has not taken a break like this since he got on the roster. So just a little worrisome. We've seen him rocked in several fights. Big shots have landed because he's kind of walked into them. And he's been able to push through. I worry, someone like Kaikara France, I think, might be able to clip and catch a guy like Brandon Royval and put him down. Askar, I don't know that he's going to hit him quite that hard because his striking is not really his MO, but I can see Askar taking this to the ground, and I can see Askar kind of blanketing Brandon Royval. That threat of the submission is always going to be there, but I think you got to kind of trust in the sub defense of a guy like Askarov. If I was going to play this one, I would be looking at the favorite side of things, and I'm honestly... Aaron, I don't know. I'm scratching my head here. I'm honestly feeling like, given recent things, we're getting a discount on Askarov. This is a guy that was like -500, 600 in his last couple of fights. Now he's -240. And Brendan Royval gets that big comeback win over Matt Schnell. He's only a +200 underdog in this spot. Like I said, I'm a believer. I love Raw Dog. But I kind of expect this line to be a little bit wider. Do you know why it's not wider? Are you on the Raw Dog side, or are you agreeing with me, favorite or pass on this one?
Yeah, I think I'm with you on the favorite or pass side. And there's a lot of things that give me pause about this fight. One is that Royval is a very, very judge-friendly fighter. He's always throwing stuff. He's always attacking. He's always going for subs. Whereas Askarov is a very method fighter. He knows what he's good at. He will always go to what he's good at. And he's got a super high fight IQ for the most part. And that's what makes it such a difficult fight for me to call. I think the most likely outcome is an Askarov decision. If you are a little bit worried about that, I mean, you can get Royval +120, and if it goes to scorecards, it's no action. Like, if you think that is a way you want to approach it, because I think if it does go to the scorecards, there's a good shot that Askarov's going to end up winning it. But again, that being said, Royval's kind of a judge friendly type fighter. He's always active. So those are the things that give me pause in really any scenario here. Askarov could get a finish. Like, it's flyweight, and it's high level flyweight. A lot of different things can happen. So this is probably going to be a pass for me. If anybody wanted to throw Askarov in parlays, like, I totally get you, and I think that's probably the way you would want to approach this one. But Brandon Royval is too good of a fighter to overlook here, and there's just a lot of questions that I have that I'd like to see answered. And I think it's kind of a volatile fight for that reason.
I like it. I completely understand. And that's where, again, I try to do my best to shelve my fandom, Aaron. I really do. And that's where, for me, I'm more of a fan of Brandon Royval than I am of Askar. So I would love to see him win. I want to make an argument for him. And you got to hope that doesn't make you see things a little crooked in these situations. I also do think that this is maybe a good live betting opportunity, because a guy like Brandon Royval will fight for your money. If he drops that first round, you'll get an even wider price tag on him. If you see Askar, he's not really a guy that gasses or slows down generally. generally speaking. But if you feel that shift, if you feel that momentum start to swing, maybe you can jump in on someone like Brandon Royval. Or honestly, the opposite is true as well. If you start, if Brandon Royval starts off hot, but he doesn't get Askar out of there, you can kind of expect Askar to be surgical and just work his way back into the fight. I think Askar decision is the most likely outcome. God bless anybody that wants to take any other shots on this one. But I do think that Askarov probably gets his hand raised on Saturday. All right, everybody. Co-main event of the evening. We have got Jonathan Martinez, the Dragon himself, welcoming Cub Swanson to his new division. And I'm looking forward to this fight. Jonathan Martinez is a guy, Aaron, that I've struggled with a little bit. I like his style. I've got a bit of a rivalry going right now with Factory X. I keep doubting these guys, and they just keep proving me wrong. He's on a nice little 3-fight win streak here. I think I faded him successfully with Davey Grant. That's my guy. I tried to go to the well with Vince Morales, and he was able to just go ahead and outclass him in that spot. Really good footwork, lots of leg kicks. It's a good fight. This is a really fun fight. Cub Swanson, he's getting up there in age. He's getting older, and that is a big, big talking point for me because this year we've just seen these guys fail when they drop a weight class or, when they make that shift trying to find new life. It's just not coming for them. He's 38 years old and making that switch, that last-ditch effort to find a new opportunity, but he's actually not even going to have much of a size advantage in this spot. Jonathan Martinez, one of the bigger guys in this division. They have a matching 70-inch reach. Cub Swanson, the boxing has always been something that's been super impressive for me. He's got underrated power, really fast hands. Southpaw versus Orthodox matchup, which always makes things a little bit weird. I need to go back and run the numbers and see what Cub Swanson looks like against UFC Southpaws. That's something I have not looked at, but it's definitely something you're going to want to take a peek at before you make too strong of a judgment call on this one. I do not have a good feel on this fight, and I'm hoping, Aaron, that maybe you can save me on this one and tell me where you're looking, because we've got Jonathan Martinez, a minus 200 favorite against Cub Swanson, who's a legend at plus 175.
I'm going to be taking Cub Swanson here. I think that Cub Swanson is such a high fight IQ fighter. And when Jonathan Martinez faces guys like that, he really tends to freeze. And I think that Cub Swanson has all of the different weapons that are going to make this a difficult night because he's going to throw so many different things at Jonathan Martinez that he hasn't seen before. Looking at Jonathan Martinez's, look at this resume. Like, I'm going to tell you his wins in the UFC. You got Luigi Beren. We got Ping Yuan Liu, neither in the promotion. Frankie Saenz, who I believe is actually still signed to the UFC, but he's like long retired. He's like 41 or something. Thomas Almeida, we've seen he ended up being a fraud, basically. Hate to say it about the guy. He was a fun fighter to watch. Zviad Lazashvili, who was one and done in the UFC. Alejandro Perez, who has been very unimpressive for the last couple of years. And Vince Morales, who, like you, I was on in that fight. I thought that Vince Morales was going to do well, and he did well as the fight went on. As the third round came around, he started to find openings. It was too little, too late. But if you look at those names, none of those guys have what Cub Swanson brings to the table, which is a well-rounded game, veteran savvy, the ability to make adjustments on the fly. I think that Cub Swanson here is the side. I think that I think Jonathan Martinez is a really good fighter, but I just think this line is way too long in this situation. I think this should be more of a pick 'em fight. I'm going to be taking the dog money with Cub Swanson, and as you can tell, I'm starting to get my sinuses are starting to flare up just like yours as the show goes on. We've got a lot in common today, both from our picks, our assessments on these really difficult to pin fights, and our health status.
We're both just fighting it right now, Aaron, trying to keep it going right now with the family. And keep the content train rolling. Yeah, I respect it. I respect anybody taking that shot here on Cub Swanson. I really do. I want to go back because Jonathan Martinez is always more of like a Muay Thai kickboxer, right? The Factory X style. That's kind of what they do. I want to see what guys that are boxing heavy and orthodox have had success against Jonathan Martinez. I want to look a little bit deeper into that one. I do apologize, folks. Like I said, fighting the illness and took my daughter to Disneyland this past weekend. So the tape study on this fight was one that I didn't get to as cleanly as I would have liked to. So I'm going to put some more time in, do some more study. My guy Mushroom making a very, very astute observation, though. Martinez does get dropped a lot. So I do kind of like if Cub Swanson is able to land clean on him, he could make some waves here in this new division because 38, my cutoff, Aaron, is 40. Once you hit 40, that's when it all goes downhill. If Cub is able to make this cut, and like my guy Mushroom said, if the power transfers at 38 years old, he could be an issue here at this new weight class. So I'll be very interested to see. I'm going to do some more homework, folks. Nothing for me at this point. Very tempting old dog situation. All right, everybody. Main event time. We've been on for about an hour at this point. Apologies for the short show. A bit of a hustle here. Do us a favor. Smash the like button. Subscribe if you haven't. And, of course, follow and support my guy, Aaron Bronsteter, on social media everywhere. Alexa Grasso taking on Viviane Araujo. And I called this matchup, Aaron. I was doing my show, the Deadlock podcast, with my guy, Manpreet, MMA Lock of the Night.
Another Toronto guy.
He was asking... Oh yeah, gotta love Manfred. He's such a good dude. I know you know him and know him well. He was asking who was my pick to headline this card. You know, when it lost its original main event slot, they were like, who is gonna headline it? And I called that they're just gonna upgrade Grasso and Araujo because they do not do a lot of female headliners. It's just a thing. But what we're seeing is the evolution of women's MMA. It's coming hard and it's coming fast. Like, these ladies are getting good, and they're getting good rapidly. We're seeing more finishes. We're seeing more knockouts. We're seeing more complete, well-rounded fighters. We're getting some really exciting women's MMA fights, and I love it. I'm eating it up. I couldn't get enough of these higher level matchups. And I think with this card being as weak, I guess, as it is, to say it as kindly as possible, I don't want to be, I don't want to talk down on it or anything like that. But this is the perfect spot to highlight some of the hottest prospects in this women's division. Because if they were on another card with some more star power, some guys that are contenders at bantamweight, something like that, it'd be real hard to argue for them to headline. This is the perfect fight to get these ladies their first headlining opportunity. Now, Vivi is going to have a 2-inch reach advantage on Alexa Grasso. Grasso showing some 60% takedown defense. And I think that's the story here, because Vivi has got that 2.23 takedowns per 15 minutes, hits at about a 60% clip. It's going to be a striker versus grappler type of situation. I love the boxing of Alexa Grasso. She is my future star pick for this division. You know, she really likes to box people up, gets in there and really hammers people with those fists. She's got underrated power. She's got that strong lower body. I believe she moved up this weight class 1 or 2 fights ago. The physicality is something that's really been helping her, and I think she'll be able to stuff some of these takedowns. Her opponent, though, Vivi is coming off a win over Andrea KGP Lee. I mean, she lost to Chookagian. Who doesn't lose to Chookagian? You know, if you say that she's just going to maul Alexa Grasso and grind her way to a victory here, that's her path to victory. If you're taking Vivi, I'd play the decision prop. You know, usually with women's MMA, we're always looking at the decision prop, but if anybody was going to finish this fight, I would say it would be Alexa Grasso. I kind of want to side with the favorite here in this spot, Aaron, but the line is again, just a bit uncomfortably wide for me. Alexa Grasso minus 210. Vivi Araujo is a plus 180 underdog. We're in the small cage. That tends to favor the grapplers. I don't know. It's going to be a tough fight, but with it being 5 rounds, I kind of feel like Grasso's gas tank is maybe going to make the difference.
Yeah, but these are kind of feelings, right? Like, we don't really know how it's going to go as the fight goes along. There's a lot of... The funny thing about this fight is, like, both of these guys are terrible stylistic matchups for each other. Like, Araujo's had problems with these boxers that get in and out quickly, and Grasso has problems with good grapplers that are physical, that can hold her down, right? So it's almost like they're each other's kryptonite, which is kind of a weird matchup. Now, the one thing that I am interested in here is maybe the split decision properties. I think this is going to be a very close fight. I think that it goes to a decision, and I think that it goes to a close decision. For me, it feels like a trap. I feel like Grasso's gotten so good, but at the same time, I also feel like Araujo has all the tools to beat her. So I can't even call it a dog or pass, or like this is just a total pass for me. I need to kind of see how it's going to go. I might look for some props that I like, but even still, like the over 4.5 is like juiced to minus 225, right? So that's why I think like a split decision prop in a very close fight is probably the way to look at this one. I don't think there's a line for that just yet, but I just think it's going to be a very close fight, and I don't really have a great read on it. Might actually be dog or pass when I really think about it, because I think that Araujo is going to give her some problems. But again, Grasso just keeps looking better and better with each fight. And that's what makes it so tricky. So I got to just stay away. I wouldn't fault anybody for taking either side here. This is going to be a card where I think I'm going to be looking at a bunch of props. I might do a parlay that's, on something, but I don't even know what that would be at this stage. It's just a weird card. It really is. It's, when you asked me to be on this show, that was the first thing I said to you, was like, this card, I don't have a really good read on it. And I'd be surprised if anybody really does. I think Cub is really the only side that I really am quite high on from a value standpoint on this entire card. And the rest of it, I think, are just going to be kind of dart throws and props, low unit plays kind of thing. Because for UFC 280, I had some strong reads for that also. But then all the lines started to tighten. Like when Charles Oliveira was like plus 280, it's like, yeah, sign me up for Charles Oliveira plus 280, and now he's plus 136. When Sean O'Malley was like plus 350, plus 400, yeah, sign me up. But now it's like plus 245. Like the lines are tightening, and I don't really know what to do. So even that card I don't have a very strong read on. But this card I really do not have a good read on at all. So hopefully people are able to listen to the show and glean something out of it and get some sort of advice, maybe some confirmation bias for, they're looking at us. They're like, oh yeah, that's what I was thinking, and maybe they'll go ahead. But I just do not have a strong read on this card at all.
I'm feeling the same way you are, Aaron. This is a really tough card to come back to. It's a struggle. We're coming off of 1 out of 3 weeks that we had a UFC event, and this is the card that we come back to. It should be fun. There should be some finishes. I think this is going to be one of those sloppy, ugly cards that probably goes ahead and pays off from an entertainment standpoint. Really tough to get it from a betting perspective, though, in my opinion. Lots of note-taking spots. I agree with you. The main event is probably a pass. See where these girls really are, unless you're absolutely convicted, which at this point I am not. And tread lightly this week, folks. Being a content creator and then the sports books, we've got to do a show. They've got to put a line up. We don't have to bet them, right? This could be one of those spots where it's better to just keep that money in your pockets. UFC 280 right around the corner, one of the biggest cards of the year. And even with those lines tightening, just some damn good fights where I'm sure you can find some opportunities to put some bets down.
Yeah, I agree. I hit some really good football SGPs though over the weekend, and I'm, the wallet's looking pretty good for this week. So you're right. I've got to take your advice and just kind of like, cool down, calm down. Don't force anything. Maybe a little Sam Hughes play, maybe a Cub Swanson play. And then if you can find a couple of props here that you like, maybe go that way. That's kind of the way that I'm approaching it right now. That's the way that I would look at it. I'll probably end up taking the Misha by sub prop. I might take some weirdo props for Wright versus Todorović. And, outside of that, it's just kind of like, sit back and see how things go.
This is one of those cards where I think freaky things happen. I think if you want to take some flyers on those 8, 9, and 10 to 1 shots, I think this is the card to do it, because those are the types of results that we're going to see that are unexpected and bonkers. Thank you, Mushroom, for always tuning in and supporting the show. Aaron, I want to say thank you so much for giving us your time today. I've been looking forward to doing a show with you for a long time, so this was really awesome. Apologies, it was on one of the less than shining ones. We'll have to do it again on a much bigger one, maybe next time down the road.
Yeah, I'm always happy to do it. These are my favorite. This is my favorite type of content. Just listening to people give their takes on these matchups beforehand. As much as I listen to any sort of news related stuff, the breakdown shows are really what I consume a lot during the course of my week. So I always love talking about the sport in this way because listen, it's matchups, right? That's at the end of the day, I cover it from a news standpoint, but I'll never say anything about the fights being, anything other than stylistic matchups. I'm looking at those, and that's why I got so mad during Contender Series when I kept seeing Yanni come up and talk about deviation from the norm and percentages. None of that stuff matters in MMA. It's a matchup based sport. It's based on skill versus skill set versus skill set, and a lot of it is also who's the better person that day. A lot of it is just who shows up that day. It's a difficult sport to pin down for that reason, right? So, it's a lot of fun that way. I love talking about stuff like this. In this kind of a manner where it's just matchup by matchup. People will probably look at me and say, that I'm a reporter and I only care about news and stuff like that. But I am incredibly passionate about the sport on a week-to-week basis. You see me and Dan Tom before the events chopping it up and breaking down the fights. The fights, regardless of whether it's a fight night or a pay-per-view, I look forward to them all week. It's never a chore for me to cover a fight night event, even though this one on paper specifically is really not the greatest fight card on paper. It never matters to me. I'm here to watch it. I love it. And I always love seeing guys like yourself, Clint, that are so, super passionate about the sport. And everybody who's tuning into the show, you're passionate about it. They're passionate about your content. Imagine how passionate they are, right? So thanks to everybody for tuning in. I think it's always great to see people consume any different variety of MMA content, however it's presented.
We have an awesome little community here. Aaron. We really do. The MMA community is awesome and it's growing. And, shout out to an awesome guy like Dan Tom. Always love catching him. He comes on the show every now and again also. So lots of good people to interact with. And I just love breaking down and talking fights with you. And that's what I love about this setup here on the live stream is getting the listeners and the viewers. They chime in. We can highlight the comments and talk to them directly about it. Something that, I never got growing up. Yeah, my opinion was only to my my weird friend on the playground that wanted to listen to me talk about something funny like Jet Li kicking the ass of Jackie Chan. So this is a much better setup. I do want to say thank you one more time, Aaron. If you want to let the people know where they can find you, what your schedule looks like coming up for this week to support you and your content, go right ahead. Any sponsors you want to shout out, the floor is yours, my friend.
Yeah, I made it really easy on everybody. I registered a domain this year. It's just aaron.report. So if you go to www.aaron.report, it basically has my link tree with every single thing that I do. So for purposes like this, when people say, tell us what, where they can find your work, you can just go to one place, www.aaron.report, and you'll be able to find me on every different platform that I do work on.
All right. Easy peasy. Everybody go check him out. Thank you again, Aaron. Everybody, I wish I had something better for you to sign off, but my throat freaking hurts. I'm going to go get some soup. Everybody have a wonderful week. We'll be back for Thursday's Total Takedown and, of course, the Friday Undefeated Post-Weigh-In Show. Keep it locked in here to Pub Sports Radio for all your sports gambling content this week. Hit the like button on your way out. It really helps out. Thank you, guys. Have a wonderful week. Let's roll.